She re-encounters her first love after many years, and a passion is reignited as she remembers what their nights of love were like. She was perplexed when... Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment on which city and country you are watching this video from. We would love to know. The salty wind was blowing along the shore, carrying the scent of the sea and the distant sound of waves crashing against the rocks. The sky was tinted with golden and orange, hues as the sun bid farewell, casting bright reflections on the surface of the sea. It was a late afternoon of almost cinematic beauty, but for Emma, that scene brought something beyond contemplation, a deep restlessness, a feeling that she was about to relive something long buried. She parked the car near the boardwalk and took a deep breath before getting out. After so many years away, returning to that city felt like opening a book whose pages were marked by intense memories. Every corner, every cobblestone street, every scent carried fragments of a past she had never completely forgotten. Emma was a woman of strong presence, tall, with well-aligned brown hair, a firm gaze, and determined in everything she did. At 36, she had become one of the most respected event producers in the country. Her name was associated with grand festivals, million-dollar contracts, and a career built with discipline and talent. But no matter how much prestige and recognition she had achieved, there was something inside her that always felt incomplete. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder and walked along the boardwalk, feeling the fine sand infiltrating between her toes. The official reason for her return was the festival she was organizing, an event that promised to give international visibility to the city. But deep down, she knew there was another reason, one she dared not admit even to herself. When she turned the corner and spotted the small beach bar ahead, she felt a chill run down her spine. The place had a rustic structure, with wooden tables arranged under soft lighting from hanging lamps. The sound of a guitar echoed in the air, blending with laughter and the murmur of conversations around. And then she saw him. Ryan was behind the counter, laughing at something one of the customers said. His hair was still slightly messy, his beard neatly trimmed, and that smile. That damn smile that made time seem to freeze. He wore a linen shirt rolled up to his elbows, revealing strong arms, and moved with the same unpretentious confidence as before. Emma felt her heart race, and for a moment thought of retreating. But it was too late. Ryan lifted his gaze and saw her. The smile disappeared for a second, replaced by a look of genuine surprise. He blinked a few times, as if he needed to make sure he wasn't imagining things. Then slowly, he walked towards her, drying his hands on a cloth. "Emma," he said, his voice laden with disbelief. She forced a smile, trying to appear carefree, although she knew her demeanor wouldn't fool Ryan. He had always been able to see right through her. "Hi, Ryan." There was a moment of silence between them, one of those silences that say more than any word. Emma felt her skin tingle, and her body seemed to remember what it was like to stand before him, what it was to be touched by him. "I thought I would never see you here again," he finally said, crossing his arms. "I thought so too," she replied, quickly averting her gaze to the sea. "But I'm organizing a festival in the city." He raised his eyebrows, surprised. "Festival?" "Yes, a large cultural event with musical performances, gastronomy, and exhibitions. Something that could bring a new type of tourism here." Ryan nodded slowly, but Emma noticed that his gaze carried a certain caution. "Sounds interesting." She realized he didn't ask anything more. He didn't want to know details, nor did he show the enthusiasm that other people in the city would certainly demonstrate. Ryan was never one to get excited easily, and she knew he wasn't a fan of big changes. "And you?" she asked, changing the subject. "Still running the bar?" He smiled slightly. Yes, it's been 10 years now. Not a long time, but enough for me. Emma observed the place with more attention. There was a special charm there, an authenticity that made the atmosphere feel welcoming. The tables were occupied by smiling people, animatedly chatting. On the makeshift stage, a singer was gently strumming a guitar, serenading the night. "The bar looks beautiful," she praised, and noticed the proud sparkle in his eyes. "Thank you. I try to keep the spirit of what this place has always been, a refuge." She felt the weight of those words. Years ago, that same place had been their refuge, the meeting point for both, the backdrop to so many nights marked by urgent kisses, shared laughter, and whispered promises at the ear. The past seemed to pulse around them, and for a brief moment, Emma allowed herself to remember. The touch of Ryan's hands on her skin, the stolen kisses by the sea, the glances that said more than words. No other man had ever made her body respond the same way. No one else had awakened in her the intensity that Ryan did, but she knew she could not let herself get carried away. She was there for the festival, for a greater purpose. "It was good to see you, Ryan," she said, trying to sound casual. He nodded slowly, but before she could turn and leave, he asked, "Do you know about the plans for the waterfront?" Emma frowned. "What plans?" Ryan crossed his arms and sighed. "They are planning to build a luxury resort. If that happens, the small businesses here will be swallowed up. My bar and so many other places will disappear." A weight settled in Emma's chest. She didn't know about that detail. She had not been informed about this part of the project. "I had no idea," she murmured. Ryan watched her for a moment, assessing her reaction. "I hope you didn't come to help with this plan," he said, and although his voice was not accusatory, there was a hint of distrust there. Emma felt her throat tighten. "I didn't. I need to understand this better." Ryan nodded, but the sparkle in his gaze had changed. She felt a chill run down her spine as she realized that her return to that city could mean something much more complicated than a simple reunion. Unknowingly, she had just placed herself in the midst of a conflict that could change not only the future of that city, but also rewrite her own destiny. Emma walked along the fine sand of the beach, feeling the cold grains under her bare feet. The night breeze brought a familiar scent of sea and spices, mingled with the distant sound of music echoing from Ryan's bar. Her mind was a chaos. The unexpected reunion had stirred her more than she would like to admit. She stopped near a rock by the sea and hugged herself, not from the cold, but from the avalanche of sensations hitting her. She could still see in Ryan's eyes a piece of the man she had fallen in love with years ago. The same intense gaze, able to strip her soul bare without him needing to touch her. But there was also something new there. A certain distance, a caution that hadn't existed before. Her heart raced at the thought of the way he looked at her when mentioning the resort. Did he think she was part of that she could contribute to something that would destroy everything he had worked for? Just thinking about it made her feel a tightness in her chest. Emma closed her eyes, and it was as if her mind had been transported to another time. To a distant summer, when Ryan was just a young man in love with music, and she, a girl full of dreams, unafraid to love. At that time, the nights belonged to them. The bar was smaller, without so many customers, but to Emma, it was the most special place in the world. She remembered how Ryan would play the guitar for her after closing time, when the lights were already off, and only they were left, sitting on the sand, laughing and exchanging kisses that never seemed to be enough. She remembered the warmth of his hands on her skin, how their bodies perfectly fit under the starry sky, the salty taste of kisses interrupted by laughter. There was urgency, there was desire, but above all, there was love. A pure, strong, true love. And then, like a cruel breath from fate, it had all ended. She had to leave. Ryan wanted her to stay, insisted, begged. But she had a career to build, a future she couldn't find there. The farewell was devastating. Words were spoken, promises broken. Ryan loved her, but he couldn't follow her, just as she couldn't stay for him. Time passed. She met other men, tried other relationships, but it was never the same. None of them made her feel what Ryan made her feel. No kiss was as burning, no touch as impactful. He had been her flame, her refuge, and deep down, she knew. She had never stopped loving him. Now, after all these years, there they were again, facing each other as if time had knotted itself. But there were wounds, there were invisible distances that needed to be crossed. Emma opened her eyes and sighed. It was no use drowning in the past. She needed to better understand the resort situation and, most importantly, find a way to prevent it from destroying what made that city such a special place. With her decision made, she turned and walked back to her hotel. But before entering the building, she cast one last look at Ryan's bar. He was there, leaning against the counter, talking to a friend. He smiled faintly at the person in front of him, but his gaze was distant. Emma wondered if he was thinking of her the same way she was thinking of him. The persistent sound of the cell phone woke Emma before the sun had completely risen. She fumbled for the device on the nightstand and saw Claudia's name, her assistant, shining on the screen. "Good morning, Claudia," she murmured, her voice still hoarse from sleep. "Emma, we need to talk. The sponsorship team wants to move the meeting up. It seems that the investors want to close the contract for the resort before the festival even happens." Emma sat up in bed, startled. "What do you mean? Wasn't that decision supposed to be made only after the event?" "Yes, but it seems they want to secure everything beforehand. The proposal is finalized, and they want your final approval to move forward with the project." Emma rubbed her face, feeling the pressure of the day starting even before her feet hit the floor. "Fine, I'll head to the office shortly." She hung up and stared at the ceiling for a few seconds. Reality was hitting her hard. The festival, which should be a positive boost for the city, was serving as a smokescreen for a much larger plan. If she signed that contract, the resort would swallow the shoreline, the small businesses would disappear, and Ryan would lose everything he had fought for. But if she refused, the tension weighed on her shoulders. This festival wasn't just another job, it was a turning point in her career. With its success, her name would be recognized internationally. Turning it down meant risking her reputation, closing doors that had taken years to open. Emma got up, walked to the bedroom window and pulled back the curtain. The beach stretched out before her, bathed in the soft morning light. She saw some stalls being set up on the sand, fishermen collecting their nets, surfers racing for the sea. Everything there pulsed with life, tradition. How could she contribute to destroying that? She hurried to get ready and headed to the event headquarters. The temporary office was in a building downtown, where the entire team was working on organizing the festival. As soon as she stepped inside, Claudia approached her with a folder full of documents. "I've brought everything you need to see," said the assistant. "The meeting is in 20 minutes. Emma took the folder and flipped through the papers quickly. The resort project was grand, a luxurious complex with hotels, high-end restaurants, and a private marina. And at the center of the architectural plan, exactly where Ryan's bar was located, there was a marked area for redevelopment, a fancy term for saying it would be demolished. She closed the folder, feeling a bitter taste in her mouth. "Claudia, did you know that this project includes removing the local businesses?" The assistant hesitated. "Emma, I thought you knew. That was the idea from the beginning. The resort will completely change the shoreline." Change is not the right word. They want to erase what exists here and turn the city into a destination for wealthy tourists. Claudia sighed, adjusting her glasses. I know it's not ideal for the local merchants, but think of the positive impact this could have on the economy and what it could mean for your career." Emma heard the words, but her mind was elsewhere. It was on the memory of Ryan's look. The night before, the way he spoke about his bar, about how he fought to keep that place alive. "I need some time to think," she said, closing the folder firmly. "Time?" Claudia frowned. "Emma, this decision needs to be made now." Emma took a deep breath. If she signed those documents, she'd secure future contracts and more prestige in her career. If she refused, she could lose everything she had worked for. But deep down, she knew that it wasn't just a professional choice. It was a choice about who she wanted to be. "I can't decide on this today," she finally said. "I need to think it over." Claudia opened her mouth to protest, but Emma had already grabbed her bag and left. She needed air. She needed to think. She drove to the shore, parked near the boardwalk, and walked aimlessly until, almost without realizing it, her feet led her back to Ryan's bar. The place was still closed, but the side door was ajar. She hesitated for a moment before lightly knocking on the wood. "We're closed," came Ryan's hoarse voice from inside. "Not for me, I hope." There was silence before he appeared at the door. Ryan was wearing a simple black t-shirt, his hair messy, and a dish towel thrown over his shoulder. Upon seeing her, he crossed his arms and watched her with an unreadable expression. "I thought you were busy with important meetings," he said, his voice laden with irony. Emma didn't let it affect her. "Can we talk?" He opened the door wider and made space for her to enter. The bar was empty, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. "About what exactly?" he asked, leaning against the counter. Emma hesitated for a second. "About the resort," Ryan laughed, but there was no humor in his expression. "I already know everything I need to know. They're going to tear this place down to build a hotel for millionaires. End of story." "It's not that simple," Emma retorted. "I didn't know the details when I accepted this project." He raised an eyebrow. "Didn't know or didn't want?" "To know." She felt the blow. "I would never support something that would harm you, Ryan." He held her gaze for a long time before speaking again, his voice softer this time. "And now that you know, what are you going to do?" Emma didn't have an answer, but she knew that, for the first time in a long time, she needed to listen to her heart. Ryan did not look away. His brown eyes seemed to try to decipher her, as if searching for some hidden truth behind her words. Emma felt the weight of the question echo inside her. What would she do now? The silence between the two was thick, laden with unspoken memories. "I don't know," she admitted, crossing her arms and averting her gaze to the rustic wooden floor of the bar. "But I know I don't want to see this place disappear." Ryan let out a short laugh, devoid of humor. "Then you have a problem, because the investors aren't going to change their minds just because you don't want them to." "I can try," Emma retorted. "Perhaps there are other ways to modernize the city without destroying what makes it special." "And what makes you think they'll listen to you?" He leaned his hands on the bar and leaned his body slightly forward, closing the distance between them. Emma felt her pulse quicken. His proximity awakened in her something she had been trying to ignore since she set foot in that city. "Because I'm good at what I do," she replied, her voice steadier than she really felt. Ryan let out a sigh and ran his hand through his hair, looking frustrated. "You've always been determined," he said, with a half-smile that disarmed her for a moment. "But this time it might be too late." Emma bit her lip, feeling anguish swell inside her. She didn't want to admit it, but a part of her was terrified. "I need to try." Ryan looked at her for a few more seconds, then shook his head slowly. "Why did you come back, Emma?" She blinked, surprised by the question. "I already said, the festival—" "No!" He interrupted her, his voice low but firm. Why did you really come back?" Emma opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Her heart was pounding, and heat rose in her chest. She knew exactly what he was talking about. Ryan. He took a step forward, further shortening the distance between them. "You left," he continued, his voice heavy with contained emotion. "You didn't look back. And now you're here again, as if time hadn't passed, as if—" He stopped speaking, but Emma felt in the air what he hadn't said, as if they had never stopped being each other's. She swallowed hard. "I thought about you," she confessed in a whisper. Ryan blinked slowly, surprised by her honesty. "Then why didn't you come back before?" The question hurt more than she would have liked to admit. "Because I was scared," she confessed, looking away. "Scared to look back and realize I left something too important behind." Ryan was silent for a moment, then let out a heavy sigh. "And what do you want now?" She raised her eyes to him, and in that instant, everything she had tried to hide since their reunion became impossible to ignore. She wanted it all. She wanted his touch, the warmth of his arms, the sense of belonging that only Ryan had been able to provide. She wanted to erase the lost time, as if it were possible to pick up from the exact point where they had stopped. But she knew it wasn't that simple. "I don't know," she replied, her voice barely a whisper. Ryan held her gaze for a few more seconds, then leaned back slightly, as if trying to regain control of the situation. "You have a lot to lose if you go against these investors," he said, changing the subject. "If you don't sign the contract, you could ruin your own career." Emma took a deep breath. "I know. And still you want to risk it all?" She looked around. The bar was empty now, but Emma could see the soul of that place. The trace of moments lived there, the stories built within those wooden walls, the nights filled with music and sincere smiles. "Yes," she replied finally. Ryan seemed surprised by the determination in her voice. He rubbed his beard and shook his head as if trying to process that information. "I can't change this alone," Emma continued. "If I go against the resort, I need support. I need the city to fight alongside me." Ryan crossed his arms and watched her for a few seconds. "Do you think the people will buy into this fight?" "If they understand what's at stake, yes. But for that, I need your help." Ryan let out a brief laugh. "My help? You know everyone here. You have the trust of the people. If we want to fight this, we need to start somewhere." He looked at her for one long moment, as if trying to decide whether or not to trust her. Then, to Emma's surprise, he smiled slightly. "You never make things easy, do you?" She laughed, feeling the relief ease some of the tension building inside her. "Never." Ryan watched her for a few more seconds before nodding. "All right, Emma, let's fight for this." Her heart skipped a beat. She knew that wouldn't solve everything. She knew there were still enormous challenges ahead. But in that moment, with Ryan by her side once again, she felt that perhaps there was still something between them that time hadn't managed to erase. Emma knew that the decision to confront the investors would change everything. The city, her career, and most importantly, her relationship with Ryan. But she was not prepared for the speed with which the consequences would start to appear. The next morning, while reviewing some documents in the festival's temporary office, Claudia rushed in, holding her phone with a look of alarm. "Have you seen this?" she asked, handing the device to Emma. In the email, a short and direct message from the investors sent a chill down her spine. "Emma, we need an urgent response. We know you have been close to the local merchants. We want to emphasize that your involvement in this project depends on your full cooperation. We cannot have doubts about your loyalty." The impact of those words was immediate. Loyalty. What did it mean, after all? For the investors, it was about honoring the contract. ensuring that the event was a success and facilitating the construction of the resort. For Ryan, it was about fighting to preserve what he and so many others had built with effort. For Emma, the dilemma was suffocating. Claudia sat across from her, watching her with a mix of concern and curiosity. "What do you intend to do?" Emma exhaled slowly, as if she could release all the anguish building up inside her. "I cannot sign this contract, Claudia." The assistant raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Are you aware of what this means?" "I am," she replied firmly. "But I also know that if I sign, I will be helping to erase this city's identity." Claudia rested her elbows on the table and intertwined her fingers. "Emma, I've known you long enough to know that you don't make impulsive decisions. But you need to understand that this doesn't just affect you. The whole team depends on this contract. If you pull back, you could lose credibility in the market." Emma knew it was true. Every event she organized was a stepping stone for her career, and that festival was the biggest of them all. But something inside her screamed that she could not ignore the impact that resort would have on the city. "I still have time," she said. "I will find another solution." Claudia sighed and leaned back in her chair. "I hope you know what you are doing." That night, Emma returned to Ryan's bar. He was behind the counter, serving drinks to some customers. But when he saw her enter, he made a slight nod to one of the staff and slipped out through a side door, indicating for her to follow. In the back patio, where some empty tables were arranged under yellow lights, Ryan leaned against the wooden wall and crossed his arms. "Any news?" Emma took a deep breath. "The investors already know I'm hesitating. They want a quick answer." Ryan let out a dry laugh. "And what happens if you say no?" "I lose everything." He stared at her for a moment, as if trying to measure the weight of those words. "Then why are you still here?" The question hung between them, laden with hidden meanings. Emma knew that Ryan was not just asking about the festival. He was asking about them, about why she was still there, in the city that had once been the home of her heart. She moved a little closer, inhaling his familiar woody scent. "Because I can't turn my back on this," she admitted. "Nor on you." Ryan averted his gaze, running his hand through his hair. "Emma, don't do this for me. I'm not doing it just for you," she shot back. "This is bigger than both of us, but I would be lying if I said you weren't a part of it." For a moment, silence took over the place. Only the sound of waves in the distance and the murmuring of customers inside the bar filled the space between them. Then Ryan stepped forward, and Emma felt her heart race. "If you are going to fight against them, then you need to do it right," he said. "What do you mean?" "You can't just say you don't want the resort. You need a plan. You need support." Emma nodded. "I know, and for that we need the city on our side." Ryan looked at her for a moment, and then a slight smile appeared at the corner of his lips. "Then I think I know where we can start." The next night, Ryan's bar was packed. Unlike ordinary nights, this time customers were not just there for the music and drinks. They were there to listen. Emma stood in a corner of the hall, watching as Ryan took the microphone and addressed the crowd. "Good evening, everyone. I know many of you have heard rumors about what is happening with the city. Today, we want to clarify everything." The murmuring among the people grew, but everyone remained attentive. "The resort they are planning may seem like an opportunity, but the cost will be too high. Small businesses like this bar, the restaurants, the family inns, all of this could disappear." Emma saw the worried looks among the locals. Many there depended on tourism, but had never considered the possibility of losing their own businesses. Ryan continued, "But there is still time for us to react, and we are not alone." He looked directly at Emma. "There is someone here who can help us." The gazes turned to her. Emma felt a chill in her stomach, but took a deep breath and walked to the makeshift stage. She took the microphone from Ryan's hands and looked at the people before her. "My name is Emma, and I was hired to organize the festival that will take place soon. The event was sold as a way to enhance the city, but I have come to discover that there is more at stake. The resort is practically a done deal, and if you sign the contract, places like this bar will cease to exist." The unrest in the crowd intensified. Emma seized the moment to continue. "But it's not too late. We can still prevent this. If we unite, if we show that the city does not want this project, we can pressure them to reconsider this decision." There was a brief silence before someone in the crowd asked, "What do we need to do?" Emma exchanged a look with Ryan before responding, "We need each one of you. We need to take this story to the media, create mobilization, show that this city has a voice." The murmuring increased, but this time it was one of hope. And there, in the midst of that crowd, Emma realized she was on the right path. That this fight was not just about business or contracts. It was about belonging, about resisting time, and perhaps about rediscovering what should never have been lost. The bar was still buzzing with lively conversations when Emma slipped out through the side door, seeking a moment of silence to gather her thoughts. The mobilization that night had been a success. People were outraged, willing to fight for what was theirs, but she knew this was just the beginning. The investors would not give up so easily. The salty breeze of the night blew against her face, and she closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself to be enveloped by the nostalgia of that place. It was incredible how, despite the years, that city still evoked such deep feelings in her. Escaping the crowd, Ryan's voice interrupted her thoughts. Emma opened her eyes and saw him leaning against the doorframe, holding a glass of whiskey with a serene expression. But she knew that look. He was watching her in a way that made her heart race. "I just needed a little fresh air," she replied, crossing her arms. Ryan walked over to her and stopped at her side, looking out at the distant sea. They stood in silence for a few moments, listening to the sound of the waves crashing on the sand. "You stirred everyone up in there," he said after a while. "I haven't seen these people so motivated about something in a long time." Emma smiled faintly. "That means we have a chance." Ryan nodded, but there was something more in his expression. "And you? How are you dealing with all this?" She hesitated before answering. "I won't lie, I'm scared. I know I'm risking my career, and if this goes wrong, I could lose everything." Ryan turned to face her, his expression serious. "Have you lost something important before?" Emma swallowed hard. Yes. He held her gaze for a long time. The silence between them carried all the words that had remained unspoken over the years. All the suppressed desire, all the longing that had never faded completely. "Me too," he murmured. Emma felt a knot in her throat. She knew he was talking about her. Ryan stepped forward, closing the distance between them. His woody scent mixed with the salt of the sea invaded her senses, bringing back memories she had tried to ignore since she returned. "Do you think the past can be fixed?" he asked, his voice low and hoarse. She felt a chill run down her spine. "I don't know," she whispered. "But maybe we can find out." His gaze dropped to her lips, and for a moment Emma thought he was going to kiss her. Her heart raced, and the air between them seemed to thicken, charged with a magnetic tension that had never dissipated. But instead, Ryan pulled back slightly, as if he were fighting against something inside himself. "We still have a lot to sort out," he said, looking away. Emma felt a mix of relief and frustration. Part of her wanted him to kiss her right there, to erase the years of distance with a single touch, but another part knew that couldn't happen yet. "I know," she replied, trying to catch her breath. Ryan ran his hand through his hair, looking frustrated with himself. "We should go inside. You still need to talk to a few more people." Emma nodded, but before he could step away, she gently held his arm. Ryan looked at her in surprise. and she smiled faintly. "Thank you for being by my side in this." He held her gaze for a moment, before smiling back. "I've always been here, Emma." And then he went inside, leaving her alone with her thoughts and her heart beating out of sync. In the following days, the mobilization in the city grew. Emma and Ryan organized meetings, summoned local businessmen, and sought support from regional media. The movement against the resort gained momentum, but the investors began to react. First came the phone calls. The festival sponsors wanted guarantees that the event wouldn't be affected by undesirable protests. Then rumors began to spread. Some people started saying that Emma wasn't concerned about the city, but rather about her ex-boyfriend. And then came the real threat. One night, as Emma left the office, she found an envelope under her car windshield. Her heart raced as she opened it to find a single sheet inside. "Beware of the choices you make. Some doors do not open again." Emma felt a cold shiver run through her body. Someone was trying to intimidate her. Clenching the paper tightly, she looked around, but the street was deserted. Her stomach churned with a mix of fear and indignation. She picked up her phone and called Ryan. "What's up?" he asked when he answered. "We need to talk. Now." Half an hour later, Emma was sitting in Ryan's office, which was located at the back of the bar. He took the note from her hands and read it, clenching his jaw. "This isn't just a warning," he said finally. "It's a threat." "I know," Emma replied, crossing her arms to try to stave off the chill she felt, even though the night was warm. Ryan ran a hand over his face, clearly irritated. "These guys aren't joking. They want you to back down." "And you think I will?" He looked at her, and for the first time that night a smile appeared on his face. "I know you won't." Emma took a deep breath. "So we need to act fast, before they do something worse." Ryan nodded, but there was a clear concern in his eyes. "Emma, are you sure you're willing to go all the way with this?" She looked him in the eye and didn't hesitate to answer. "I can't back down now." Ryan sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Then let's not let them knock us down." Emma felt a wave of relief and strength wash over her at hearing this. She knew she wasn't alone, and at that moment she was certain that Ryan was the only person in the world she could completely trust. Emma had never felt such adrenaline, coursing through her veins as she did now. The note she had found in her car was a clear warning. Someone wanted to silence her. But instead of retreating, the threat only strengthened her resolve. In the following days, the movements against the resort grew. Ryan helped her gather merchants, fishermen, local artists, and residents who did not want to see their roots being destroyed. Before long, the mobilization took over the town. Articles began to circulate in the regional press, denouncing the negative impacts of the project. What had once seemed an impossible battle was now becoming a declared war. But the investors would not stand idly by. That night, Emma was in the festival's office reviewing some agendas when the phone rang. Upon answering, she recognized the cold voice of one of the businessmen responsible for the project. "Emma, I think we need to talk." She leaned back in her chair, keeping her voice steady. "I'm listening. Let's get straight to the point. We know you are leading this movement against the resort. It's costing us money and, frankly, patience. Maybe because people have the right to fight for what is theirs," she retorted. On the other end of the line, the man let out a long sigh. "Don't be naive. You have a bright career ahead of you, Emma. But if you continue down this path, you will close all the doors for yourself." Emma squeezed the phone tighter. "If my career depends on destroying what this town holds most precious, then maybe I'm in the wrong profession." The businessman laughed, but there was coldness in his tone. "Very well. But remember, those who choose to fight against us rarely come out unscathed." The call ended before Emma could respond. She remained still, the phone still pressed to her ear as she tried to process those words. "Rarely come out unscathed." For a moment she felt a chill run down her spine, but soon she took a deep breath, stood up from the chair and grabbed her car keys. She needed to see Ryan. The bar was already closing when Emma arrived. Ryan was behind the counter, organizing bottles, but stopped as soon as he saw her walk in. "What happened?" he asked, noticing the tension on her face. Emma approached and placed her phone on the counter. "I just received a call. It was a clear warning. They want me to stop." Ryan took the phone and pressed his lips together, thoughtful. "What exactly did they say?" "That I am closing doors, and that those who fight against them never come out unscathed." He cursed softly and ran his hand through his hair. "They are not kidding, Emma. I know, but that doesn't mean I'm going to give up." Ryan held her gaze for a moment and then shook his head, a mix of frustration and admiration in his expression. "You really don't back down." Emma smiled slightly. "It was one of the things you always liked about me, wasn't it?" Ryan didn't reply immediately. Instead, he looked at her as if he could see not only the determined woman before him, but also the girl he had loved once. "I liked many things about you," he said softly. The air between them seemed to electrify. Emma felt her heart race, and Ryan took a step forward, closing the distance between them. "Ryan," he raised his hand and lightly touched her face, as if testing whether this was real. "Do you have any idea how hard it was to see you go?" he murmured. She swallowed hard, feeling a wave of emotions rise to the surface. "I never wanted to hurt you, but you did." The silence between them weighed as much as the years that had been lost. Emma wanted to say that she suffered too, that she thought of him every night, that no other man made her feel the way he did, but the words wouldn't come out. Then Ryan did what she feared and at the same time desired. He pulled her close and kissed her. It was a kiss filled with urgency, longing, and a passion that time had not been able to erase. Emma felt her body mold to his, as if this was where she had always belonged. The taste of Ryan was the same as she remembered, warm, addictive, and when he deepened the kiss, pulling her by the waist, she knew there was no escape. They still belonged to each other. When they parted, both were breathless. Ryan rested his forehead against hers and smiled softly. "Should I apologize for this?" Emma laughed, feeling a lightness she hadn't felt in years. "Don't you dare!" He laughed too, but soon grew serious again. "We will win this battle," he promised, "and then we will figure out what is still left between us." Emma nodded, feeling her heart explode within her chest. "Let's go." That night, she realized she was fighting not just for the town. She was fighting to reclaim what she had never meant to lose. The kiss from Ryan still burned on Emma's lips when she returned to the hotel that night. Her body still felt the electricity of that moment, but her mind was restless. The fight against the resort had already passed the point of no return. The investors were pressing, and now there was no doubt they would do anything to ensure their plans were not thwarted. However, Emma would not back down. The next day, she and Ryan met with a group of local merchants to discuss the next steps. They were at Mrs. Celia's small bakery, a woman of nearly 70 who had kept the place running for decades. We already have plenty of support," Ryan said, scanning the small crowd gathered. "But we need something to force the investors to reconsider this resort." "The media is already covering the mobilization," added Emma, "but it's not enough. If we can expose irregularities in the contract or any legal flaw, we can block this project." Mrs. Celia slammed her cup on the table. "Those suits think they can walk all over us as if we're nothing. My father built this bakery with his own hands, and now they want to take it away from me?" Other merchants nodded in agreement. "And the mayor?" asked one of the fishermen. "Can't he intervene?" Ryan let out a humorless laugh. "He's bought off. He's already secured his piece of the project." Emma pressed her lips together, frustrated. She knew they needed something stronger to prevent the resort's construction. "I need to access the original contract documents," she said. "If there's any dubious clause, we can use it against them." "Do you think they would let that leak?" Ryan questioned. "No," she admitted, "but I know someone who can manage it." Everyone looked at her with curiosity. "One of my contacts at the sponsorship company has access to the internal files," Emma explained. "If there's anything illegal about this project, I can get the evidence." Ryan crossed his arms. "And what if there's nothing?" She looked at him with determination. "Then we'll find another way, but I won't give up." That night, Emma made the riskiest call of her life. "Mariana, I need your help." Her friend, who worked in the legal sector at the festival's sponsorship company, hesitated before responding. "Emma, do you have any idea what you're asking me? If there's something wrong with this contract, the whole city will suffer. I know you don't condone this kind of thing." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Mariana let out a sigh. "Give me a few hours. I'll see what I can do." Emma thanked her and hung up. Her heart raced. If Mariana could get the information she needed, there might be a real chance to turn this around. The next morning, Emma received an email from Mariana. "You were right. There are irregular clauses in the contracts, especially regarding environmental issues. I will send you everything in a secure link, but be careful, because if they find out this information leaked, the consequences could be serious." Emma quickly accessed the documents. Her hands trembled as she read the clauses that indicated severe failures in the resort's environmental licensing. The investors had omitted important data about the environmental impact of the construction, and this could be enough to halt the project. She grabbed the phone and called Ryan. "I got it." "What?" "Evidence. The resort has legal flaws that could invalidate the contract." Ryan was silent for a second before bursting into incredulous laughter. "So we have a real chance?" "Yes," Emma confirmed, "but we need to act fast." That afternoon, Emma and Ryan met with a journalist from a major news outlet. He listened attentively as Emma explained everything, showing the documents she had obtained. "If this gets published, the investors will have to answer to the authorities," Emma explained. "Now, the environmental impact is a serious matter, and this information could be enough to suspend the project." The journalist read the papers and nodded. "I will publish the article today, but brace yourselves for their reaction." Emma knew this was the decisive moment. That night, the city was in uproar. The news about the irregularities in the resort project had already spread. Social media was ablaze, and even national press was beginning to take up the case. The investors, with no way out, issued an official statement saying they would re-evaluate the project. But Emma knew it was just a way to admit defeat without losing complete dignity. Ryan found Emma on the beach, where she was watching the waves, relieved but still processing everything. He approached and stopped beside her. "You did it," she smiled, turning to face him. "We did it." He nodded, but after a moment his expression softened. "And now?" Emma knew what he meant. The resort was out of the question. "But what about them?" She took a deep breath. "Now I stay." Ryan blinked, surprised. "Stay?" She nodded, feeling her heart race. "I've spent years running away from everything I felt. But now I know I don't need to run anymore. My place is here." Ryan smiled, and this time he didn't hesitate. He pulled her close and kissed her with the intensity of someone who had waited too long to live that moment. This time, there were no more doubts, no more barriers. The city was saved. And finally, so were they. Emma felt Ryan's lips against hers, warm, firm, filled with a desire that time had never erased. The sound of the waves crashing on the sand was the perfect soundtrack for that moment. Unlike the first kiss they had shared days earlier, tense, uncertain, this was a reunion of souls. There were no more doubts, no more fears. When they pulled away, Ryan kept his hands on her waist as if he didn't want to let her go. His gaze was intense, shining under the moonlight. "Are you sure about this?" he murmured, still breathless. Emma smiled and brushed her fingertips across his face, feeling the roughness of his newly grown beard. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Ryan smiled slightly, but there was something more in his eyes, a mix of relief and contained passion. "Then I need to show you something," he said, taking her hand and pulling her. "Along the beach." Emma laughed, feeling the cold sand under her bare feet as she followed him. "Where are we going?" "You'll see soon." Ryan guided her to a more secluded spot where the lights of the city didn't reach and the sky appeared even more starry. He stopped in front of a small wooden cabin, simple yet cozy, built among some low trees. Emma looked at him with curiosity. "What is this?" Ryan opened the door and turned on a single lamp hanging from the ceiling. The interior of the cabin was rustic but comfortable. A guitar leaned against the wall, a light fabric sofa, and some shelves filled with books and old photographs. She walked slowly through the space, letting her fingers glide along the spines of the books until she stopped in front of a black and white photograph. Her heart tightened as she recognized the image. Her and Ryan, young, laughing, their feet in the water, completely in love. "You kept this," she whispered, touching the frame gently. Ryan approached her from behind and wrapped an arm around her waist. "I could never get rid of it." Emma turned to face him, and in that moment, she realized the depth of what they were experiencing. It was not just a reunion, it was the confirmation that what they felt for each other had never disappeared. "Ryan," she began, but he silenced her with a soft, tender kiss, different from all the ones they had exchanged since she returned. It was a kiss of belonging. He pulled her closer, and Emma felt every part of her body respond to his touch. Ryan's hands glided over her skin with the same intimacy as years ago, as if time had never passed. His lips traveled down her neck to her shoulder, and Emma sighed, closing her eyes and giving herself up completely. That night, amidst rumpled sheets and whispers in the dark, they reignited a flame that had never gone out. The sun was already rising on the horizon when Emma awoke. Ryan was still sleeping beside her, his arm thrown over her waist, his breathing calm. She smiled, running her fingers through his hair, feeling light, whole. For the first time in years, her heart didn't carry the weight of uncertainties, but there was something that still needed to be resolved. Careful not to wake him, she got up and put on a shirt of Ryan's that had been thrown on a chair. She walked to the small porch of the cabin and took a deep breath, feeling the smell of the sea. The city was safe from the resort. The investors had backed off, and the local culture had been preserved. But what about her? What would she do now? Emma knew she could restart her career anywhere, but the idea of leaving again, of leaving Ryan behind once more, was unbearable. It was then that she realized that the decision had already been made. She would not leave. The sound of footsteps made her turn around. Ryan was at the door, his hair tousled, his eyes still sleepy, but with a lazy smile on his lips. "Already awake?" Emma smiled and approached him, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I was thinking about something." "About what?" She took a deep breath and then said, "I want to stay." Ryan looked at her, as if trying to decipher whether those words were real or just a dream. "Stay?" "Yes. I want to open my own event company here. I want to turn this city into a cultural hub without having to destroy its essence." Ryan's eyes lit up. "Are you serious?" Emma nodded. "I've never been more serious in my life." He smiled and pulled her in for a kiss. a kiss that sealed a new beginning. The past could not be changed, but the future, that they could still build together. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and changes. Emma not only decided to stay, but she was determined to turn her presence into something concrete. She began to meet with local business owners, artists, and residents to create a new concept of cultural events in the city. Her goal was clear: to enhance the identity of that place without mischaracterizing it, without allowing it to be swallowed by ambitious projects that ignored its roots. Ryan was by her side at every step. For years, he had fought alone to keep his bar and the culture of the city alive, but now, for the first time, he felt he was not carrying that weight alone. "Are you really willing to bet everything on this?" he asked one night, as they organized a contact list for future partnerships together. Emma smiled, resting her elbow on the table and looking at him affectionately. "I already bet everything once when I left. Now I want to bet everything by staying." Ryan held her hand over the table and squeezed it gently. "This time, I won't let you go anywhere." His intense gaze made Emma feel a delightful shiver run down her spine. There was something different between them now. A silent certainty that regardless of what happened, they would face everything together. The news that Emma would stay spread quickly. Many celebrated the decision, seeing in her a new hope for the future of the city. But not everyone was satisfied. One afternoon, while she was reviewing some documents in the temporary office of the festival, she received an unexpected visit. The man in a dark suit entered without announcement, tall, imposing, with a cold and calculating look. Emma recognized him immediately. He was one of the main investors of the resort, someone who had remained in the background until then. "Mr. Vasconcelos," she greeted him, showing no surprise. He pulled out a chair and sat down in front of her, crossing his hands on the table. "You have caused us a lot of trouble, Emma." She maintained a neutral expression. "I believe I just prevented the city from being exploited." Vasconcelos let out a short laugh, but his eyes remained impassive. "You are clever. You knew exactly where to strike, but you can't win all the time." Emma crossed her arms. "Is this a warning? It's advice. You still have a strong name in the market. You could work anywhere. You don't need to throw your career away because of an emotional attachment." She narrowed her eyes. "If you think I'm here out of whim, you don't understand anything about me." "I understand more than you might imagine," he shot back, leaning slightly forward. "You are not here just for the city. You are here for Ryan." Emma felt a chill run down her spine, but she didn't let him see it. "That doesn't change anything." Vasconcelos assessed her for a moment, before letting out an exaggerated sigh. "Very well, Emma. If this is how you want to play, we'll play. But remember one thing, this victory may have been yours, but the war never ends." He got up and left without waiting for a response. Emma closed her eyes for a moment, trying to contain the wave of irritation she felt. She knew he wasn't bluffing, but she also knew that this time she wasn't alone. That night, Emma found Ryan on the beach. He was sitting in the sand, watching the sea, and she joined him, saying nothing for a few moments. "Are you okay?" he finally asked. She sighed. "Vasconcelos came to see me." Ryan turned to face her, his eyes immediately becoming more alert. "What did he want?" "To remind me that this fight never ends." Ryan was silent for a moment before letting out a long sigh. "He can try whatever he wants. We won't allow this city to be swallowed up by people like him." Emma watched him for a few seconds before resting her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for always being by my side." He wrapped an arm around her and kissed her hair. "I have always been. And I always will be." The cold wind of the night surrounded them, but Emma felt warm. She had never been so sure that this was her place, and that this time she would not leave. The days that followed were intense. With the resort off the table, the city began to breathe easy, and Emma moved forward with her project to transform the place into a cultural hub without destroying its roots. Ryan was by her side at every step, helping her build something that could benefit everyone. Everything seemed to finally be falling into place, until the twist happened. It was a hot afternoon, and Emma was in the festival's temporary office when she received a call from Mariana, her friend who had leaked the documents about the resort. Her voice sounded nervous, almost trembling. "Emma, there's something you need to know." "What is it?" "I kept investigating the old contracts of the resort and found something strange. The land where Ryan's bar is, it shouldn't belong to him." Emma's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "This land legally belongs to a group of businessmen since last decade, but Ryan's name appears in the documentation as the owner. That doesn't make sense. He bought that land years ago." Mariana paused before continuing. "Emma, I checked the transactions. It seems that the papers were altered. Ryan's name was inserted after the real owners had already purchased it." Emma felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. "Are you saying that Ryan may have been involved in a fraud, and if this comes to light, he could lose everything?" Emma drove to Ryan's bar with her heart racing. When she arrived, he was serving a customer, but immediately noticed that something was wrong when he saw her expression. "What happened?" he asked, dropping the dishcloth on the counter. She hesitated for a moment before pulling him by the arm and taking him to a more secluded area in the back of the bar. "Ryan, I need you to tell me the truth." He furrowed his brow. "What are you talking about?" "About this land. Your name appears in the documentation, but Mariana found out it already belonged to a group of businessmen before you bought it." Ryan went pale. "What?" Emma crossed her arms, trying to contain the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "I need to know if you knew anything. If someone offered you this land suspiciously." He ran his hands through his hair, clearly shaken. I bought this land from a broker years ago. He assured me everything was fine. I had no idea there could be something wrong. Ryan, if this comes to light, they could use it against you." His eyes filled with understanding. "They will try to take the bar from me." Emma nodded. "And more than that, if they prove there was fraud, they could even sue you." The silence weighed between the two. Ryan stepped back a little, running a hand over his face, clearly trying to process everything. "So all of this was a trap from the beginning?" Emma felt her heart tighten. It's possible that it was. The investors knew you were a problem for them. Maybe they let you believe you owned this place just to take you down at the right moment. He clenched his fists. So you mean I fought all this time for something that wasn't even mine?" "Don't say that," she replied, moving closer. "You built this bar. You made it what it is. No one can take that away from you." Ryan took a deep breath, his eyes fixed on the ground. "I don't know what to do." Emma held his face in her hands. "We will find a way. Together." That night, Emma and Ryan met with a local lawyer to understand the implications of what they had discovered. The situation was delicate. If the real owners want to claim the land, legally they can, the lawyer explained. But there's an important detail. This bar has existed for more than 10 years. There's a possibility of claiming ownership based on the time of occupation. "Is that viable?" Ryan asked. "It could be, but it would depend on a long and exhausting process." Emma and Ryan looked at each other. After everything they had gone through, were they willing to face another battle? Then, to everyone's surprise, the answer came from the least expected place. The next day, one of the businessmen from the group that held the land sought out Ryan at the bar. He was an older man with grey hair and a tired look. "I read about you in the newspapers," he said, sitting down at the counter. "I know you've been fighting for this place." Ryan watched him cautiously. "I didn't know this land. was never really mine. The businessman sighed. I also didn't know my name was still on the documents. This land was bought years ago for a project that never got off the ground. I never worried about it until now. Emma and Ryan looked at each other, unsure of what it meant. "And what does that mean?" Emma asked. The businessman took an envelope and pushed it toward Ryan. "It means I'm signing the papers to officially transfer this land to you." Ryan blinked, shocked. "What?" The man smiled slightly. "After everything I've seen in the past few days, I realize this place belongs to you. I don't want this land for a resort. I want it to continue being what it has always been, a refuge." Ryan took the documents with trembling hands. "I don't even know what to say." The businessman just gave a slight nod and got up. "Just say you'll keep fighting for what you believe in." And then he was gone. Emma looked at Ryan, and his expression was one of pure relief. "You did it," she said, smiling. "No," he replied, pulling her into a tight embrace. "We did it." She closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of his body against hers. After so many challenges, here they were, not just reclaiming the bar, but also rebuilding what they had lost. Emma knew they would still face difficulties, but in that moment, nothing else mattered. She had Ryan, he had his home, and together they had a future. And so this touching story of reunion, overcoming, and a love that stood the test of time comes to an end. But what about you? Have you ever lived something similar? Have you ever reunited with someone who left a mark on your life? Share your story in the comments. We want to know. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like and share it with someone special. And to not miss more stories like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications.